the sky in Aestian life. The Aestii worshipped the sun and the moon. Polaris of Ursa Minor knew the planets and gave them their own names. The sky in Aestian life was a living calendar, a guide, and a gateway to the transition of worlds. And the deification of celestial bodies reflects their unique importance among all pagan civilizations and cultures. Ancient Egyptians believed that life does not end with death. Death was a gate, a path to another shore of eternity. The burial chamber was like a home for eternity. Into the tomb they placed many items: boats and chariots, food and drink, household objects and other necessities for the far shore. The body was embalmed so that the soul could return to it, and the gods painted on the sarcophagi protected the journey. The Sky Mother Nut, spreading her protective wings over the sleeping soul, looked toward the west, where the sun disappears only to rise again the next morning. The cosmic legend of Osiris and Isis found its place in the construction of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Some believe that the northern and southern shafts of the king's and queen's chambers are linked to Egyptian cosmology. Egyptians believed that stars were immortal souls traveling through the heavens, and the shafts were pathways leading the ruler's soul to divine stars. The king's chamber opened toward Thuban in the constellation Draco, which at that time was close to the north celestial pole, and toward Orion, the embodiment of Osiris. The queen's chamber connected her to Kochab, the approaching pole star, and to Sirius in Canis Major, the heavenly form of Isis. The Etruscans, with whom we Balts share the house-urn tradition, believed that the dead travel to a quiet yet living underworld. It was a shore of shadows where the soul meets the ancestors and awaits another birth. Tombs resembled houses. Their facades and axes were aligned with the path of the sun during the winter solstice, which in Tarquinia stretched between 122 degrees and 238 degrees. They faced the east, where the returning sun illuminated the entrance, as if promising the soul a new dawn. Frescoes showed dancing and smiling people holding cups, musicians playing, a celebration seeming without end. The joy of life accompanied one even into death. Jewelry, vessels, and weapons were left for the deceased. "Travel, but do not forget who you were," these gifts said. The world the deceased had left still gently held his hand. Aestian ideas of the afterlife were similar: jewelry, weapons and tools, warrior attire, horses and their tack, and many signs of care for those who had gone to the land of shadows. All were abundant in their graves. Aestians buried their women facing the rising sun. Unlike the Etruscans, who oriented burials toward the winter solstice arc of the sun, the Aestii followed the annual solar path, which in the Canis region stretched from 44 degrees at summer solstice sunrise to 132 degrees at winter solstice sunrise. Thus, the heads of deceased women were turned toward the point where the sun rose on that particular morning. This feminine corridor of the sun, the Aestii, associated with both the sun and woman, givers of life men, the other biological half, were buried in the opposite manner. Their orientation floated across the full range of the sun's setting points, between 315 degrees and 228 degrees. The frequent repetition of identical sunrise or sunset directions shows careful preparation for rites. Temporary graves were arranged until the nearest calendrical festival. Ethnographers know that during spring festivals, symbolic funerals were enacted at dawn, an echo of these early customs. The answer to how Aestii kept their dead in temporary graves is found in the late 9th century report by Wulfstan. The Aestii have the custom of keeping the dead unburned among their kin and friends for 1 or 2 months. Kings and nobles are kept unburied even longer. The more wealth they have, sometimes up to half a year, and they remain unburned, lying on the ground in their houses, and while he lies inside, there must be feasting and games until he is burned. And he added, "There is among the Aestii a kin group able to produce cold. Thus the dead lie long without decaying, for they freeze them. By placing 2 pots filled with beer or water, they cause both to freeze, whether winter or summer." Orienting the dead toward the sun was more common among farming and herding communities. But in Aestian society, the cult of the moon and Polaris of Ursa Minor was also widespread. Studying the moon cult is difficult. The moon only periodically departs from the sun's path during its high moon position, which occurs rarely. Once every 18 years, peoples across the world had lunar calendars and knew the moon's cosmological meaning. The Aestii were no exception. In the Aestian world, Polaris was not just a star, it was the direction of home, a hope of return, a path that night could not darken. Whether one traveled a single kilometer or 1,000, Polaris remained the guide that kept a sky-literate traveler from perishing in unknown lands. It was especially important for those whose crafts required travel. The sky we see changes every second, and a sky similar to today's will reappear only after about 25,000 years. Thus, the stars closest to the Earth's axis, the imaginary line pointing to the north celestial pole, change through time. Today, Polaris is only 38 arc minutes from the pole, but in the first year AD, the distance was about 11 degrees. Ursa Minor and Polaris circled the pole like an eye whose center marked true north for the people of that time. At dawn in the first year AD, before sunrise, inhabitants of the Kaunas region saw Polaris in the eastern sky, 15 degrees from the pole. It was precisely toward this direction, on the morning of burial, that the Etruscans turned the head of their deceased kinsman, and the Aestii had a system of horizon markers showing the position of Polaris each morning before sunrise. In the cycles of the sun, in the rhythms of the moon, and in the slow drift of Polaris across the millennia, the Aestii, like all the world's civilizations, saw the order of the universe and embodied it in their burial monuments.